The sky above Manhattan shimmered with the glow of a city that never stopped pretending everything was perfect. In the heart of that illusion stood Lucien Graves, a man who wore his success like armor. CEO of Graves Enterprises, a tech empire forged from ambition and insomnia, Lucien was known for being brilliant, emotionally detached, and devastatingly handsome. But behind the polish of his bespoke suits and signature aloofness, Lucien carried a secret, the kind that didn't fit into press releases or magazine covers. His younger brother, Julian, was getting married in 10 days. It was a grand affair, set in a vineyard upstate, surrounded by the crème de la crème of society. Lucien had been dreading it for months, not because he disliked his brother or the celebration, but because of the one persistent question that always hovered around him like a vulture. So, Lucien, when will you settle down? His board members, investors, and even old family friends seemed obsessed with his single status. The last time he attended an event alone, an overeager heiress had accidentally spilled champagne on his lap and asked if she could dry him off. This time he needed a solution. Something simple, clean, and temporary. He needed a fake wife. The idea came to him not in a boardroom, but in a quiet cafe near Soho, where his assistant, Tessa, was droning on about spreadsheets while he stared into his untouched espresso. Tessa, who knew his life better than he did, had already compiled a list. Actresses, models, influencers, she said, flipping through her tablet. But they all come with baggage or paparazzi. Lucien waved it away. No, I want someone normal. Someone who can disappear after the weekend. Tessa gave him a look. You want Cinderella without the glass slipper. He didn't respond. That's when she hesitated, then reached into her bag and pulled out a worn business card. There's a girl, she said slowly. She works part-time at a florist downtown. Quiet, polite, pretty in a classic way. I hired her once for a family function to pretend to be my cousin's girlfriend. She was believable. Lucien raised an eyebrow. You think I should hire a florist to pretend to be my wife? I think you should meet her. She's discreet. And she needs the money. Lucien pocketed the card without another word. Her name was Ivy Lane. She worked at a quaint little shop called Petal and Thorn. It smelled like wild roses and eucalyptus, with low-hanging chandeliers made of driftwood and glass bulbs. Ivy was arranging a bouquet when Lucien walked in, and the world, for a brief, inexplicable moment, slowed. She didn't look up right away. Her fingers moved delicately, like she was handling something sacred. When she did look up, he was caught off guard. She was breathtaking, but not in the way of runway models or movie stars. Her beauty was understated, haunting. Pale blue eyes framed by lashes that curled upward like question marks. A delicate jaw, a soft mouth, and hair the color of autumn leaves caught in morning sunlight. Lucien forgot what he came to say. Ivy Lane, he asked finally. Yes, she answered, her voice as soft as the flowers around her. He cleared his throat. My name is Lucien Graves. I have a business proposition. They met again that evening, in a private room at a quiet French bistro. She wore a simple navy blue dress, her hair tied loosely at the back. Lucien noticed the way she sat, composed, cautious, yet strangely serene. He explained everything. The wedding, the expectations, the pressure, the need for a temporary, convincing relationship. Ivy listened, hands clasped around a cup of mint tea. So, she said at last, you want me to pretend to be your wife? For 3 days, he confirmed. You'll be compensated generously. $5,000. All expenses covered. You'll attend the wedding, stay in the same suite, and pretend we're madly in love. She studied him for a moment. And after that, we part ways. No obligations. No contact. She nodded slowly. Why me? Lucien paused. Because you're forgettable. In the best way. She smiled faintly. I'll take that as a compliment. You should. And just like that, the deal was sealed. She signed the agreement the next day. The following week passed in a blur. Ivy was fitted with dresses, briefed on Lucien's family, and coached in the art of high society small talk. She never asked questions, never complained. She moved through the rehearsals like someone walking through a dream, present but distant. Lucien found himself watching her more than he should. She laughed at his brother's jokes. She smiled when his mother adjusted her necklace. She cried silently during the rehearsal dinner toast. And yet he couldn't pin her down. There was something about her, something buried beneath the calm exterior. A sadness she wore like perfume, faint but impossible to ignore. He began to wonder if maybe she had secrets too. The night before the wedding, they sat on the balcony of their suite. The vineyard stretched beneath them, silver under the moonlight. Ivy wore a silk robe, her hair down. She looked nothing like a florist or an actress. She looked like a secret the world had forgotten. Lucien handed her a glass of wine. "You've done well," he said. "Thank you. You've fooled everyone." She turned to him. "Even you." He hesitated. "Especially me." She laughed softly. Then silence settled between them. The kind of silence that isn't empty but full. "I wasn't always this quiet," she said finally. "There was a time I dreamed of being seen." He looked at her. "What happened?" She took a sip of wine. "Life. People. Pain." Lucien didn't press. But something shifted in him, a quiet ache. Not pity but recognition. They were more alike than he thought. The wedding day arrived with golden sunlight and the scent of lavender in the air. Ivy walked beside him in a pale champagne gown that clung to her like light. Guests whispered. Cameras clicked. Lucien held her hand tighter than he meant to. "Smile," she whispered through perfect teeth. "You're enjoying this," he murmured back. "Maybe a little." He didn't know if she was pretending anymore. And that terrified him. As the couple exchanged vows, Lucien glanced sideways. Ivy was crying again. Real tears. He wasn't sure what hurt more, knowing they weren't for him or wishing they were. After the ceremony there was dancing, music, champagne. Then came the moment Lucien dreaded. His aunt, a sharp-tongued matriarch, pulled Ivy aside. "You're a mystery, dear. Where did Lucien find you?" Ivy smiled. "In a flower shop." The aunt laughed. "Well, if he ever tires of you, I might hire you myself." Lucien stepped in, wrapping an arm around Ivy's waist. "She's not going anywhere," he said, more forcefully than he intended. And in that moment, something real flickered between them. Something that neither contract nor caution could deny. That night, Ivy stood by the window, out of her gown, in nothing but silence and moonlight. Lucien watched her from the bed. "You were incredible." "I lied well," she said softly. "Too well." He turned. "What happens now?" He didn't know. The script was supposed to end here. They were supposed to part ways. No obligations. No contact. But something in him, something buried for years, wanted more. And he wasn't sure if she felt the same. Or if she was still pretending. The wedding was over, but the spell had not broken. Back in Manhattan, the rhythm of Lucien's life resumed like nothing had happened. Boardrooms, deadlines, elevator rides with strangers. But everything felt off. His penthouse seemed too quiet. The nights stretched too long. He couldn't get Ivy out of his mind. Not her face, not her silence, not the way she had slipped into his life like fog and vanished just as easily. He told himself it was curiosity. Closure, maybe. So 3 days later he went back to the flower shop. Petal and thorn still smelled of roses, but it felt different now. The doorbell jingled above his head as he stepped inside, heart pounding like he was breaking a rule. Ivy wasn't there. A middle-aged woman behind the counter blinked at him. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for Ivy." The woman frowned. "Ivy Lane." "Yes." "She quit." Lucien's brows knitted. "When?" "2 days ago." "Said she was leaving town." That was the day after the wedding. The woman paused, as if debating whether to say more. "She left a box." For someone named Lucien. His heart stumbled. She returned with a small white box tied with twine. Inside was a single pressed rose and a note in Ivy's delicate script. "Thank you for letting me be someone else, if only for a moment. Ivy." That was it. No number. No address. No way to reach her. She had disappeared. Lucien tried to forget her. He buried himself in work, dated a fashion editor for a week, and attended a string of events he couldn't remember the names of. But nothing stuck. Nothing distracted. At night, he found himself staring at the rose on his nightstand. Who was she, really? Why did someone so quiet leave such a loud echo? 2 weeks passed before the next ripple arrived. A delivery arrived at Graves Enterprises addressed to Lucien. It was a painting, oil on canvas, abstract, haunting. A girl sitting in a garden, surrounded by flowers that seemed to press in like ghosts. He knew the brushwork. Ivy had painted it. The gallery tag said, "Exhibit, Bloomed and Buried, a private collection. Curated by Isla Dorn." Sladorn. That name rang faintly. An art dealer with a reputation for finding genius in shadows. Lucien didn't hesitate. He called Tessa. "Find the exhibit. Get me the address. Now." The gallery was tucked away in a converted church in Brooklyn. Ivy's painting hung in the back, under a beam of fractured light. It wasn't the only one. There were at least 6 pieces signed, each was sad, strange and captivating. Isla Dorn found him before he could leave. "You're Lucien Graves." He nodded. "Ivy said you'd come." Lucien's throat tightened. "Where is she?" The woman studied him. "She's gone again. Left this morning. She never stays long. Too many ghosts, she says." Lucien tried to mask the emotion in his voice. "Why does she run?" Isla tilted her head. "Because people like her don't believe they deserve to stay." That night, Lucien went home and poured a drink he didn't touch. He sat in his dark living room with one question burning in his chest. Who hurt Ivy Lane? The answer came the next morning. An anonymous email. No sender, no subject line. Just a single line of text. "You're not the first rich man to try to save her. But you could be the last to break her." Attached was a link. It led to a newspaper article from 3 years ago. Promising artist Ivy Lane accused in high-profile art fraud scandal. Lucien scrolled through the article. Ivy had once been a rising star in the New York art scene. Her fiancé, a celebrated gallery owner, had taken her under his wing. But then came allegations, stolen works, falsified signatures. The gallery collapsed. He walked away. She vanished from the art world overnight. The article never proved she was guilty. But public opinion had buried her all the same. Lucien leaned back, stunned. Everything about her now made sense. The quiet. The disappearing. The painting's title. Bloomed and Buried. She had lived 100 lives, and each had ended in silence. For the first time in years, Lucien didn't know what to do. He was used to contracts, not confessions. He could rebuild companies, not people. But something in him whispered, "Go find her." He returned to the gallery 3 times that week. Each time Ivy wasn't there. He searched online, made calls, even hired a private investigator. All roads led to dead ends. Until one night when he received a call. From Ivy. Her voice was small on the other end. "You weren't supposed to look for me." He stood frozen in his kitchen. "Then why did you leave the painting?" Silence. "I guess. I hoped you would." He swallowed hard. "Where are you?" "Someplace quiet." "Ivy, I read the article. I don't care about any of it. I just want to see you." Her voice trembled. "Why?" "Because I don't believe you're forgettable anymore. And I don't think you ever were." Another pause. Then, "There's a greenhouse in the Catskills. Abandoned. Half-burned. Go there sometimes. If you really want to see me. Come alone." Then the line went dead. He drove through the night, headlights cutting through thick mountain fog. The greenhouse was like something out of a forgotten fairy tale, half swallowed by vines and time. The air smelled of damp earth and broken dreams. She was there, sitting among shattered glass and wildflowers, sketching something in a worn notebook. She looked up when he approached. No smile. Just eyes that had seen too much and trusted too little. "You came," she said. "I did." He sat beside her on the cracked stone floor. "I was going to let you forget me," she said. "It would have been kinder. Don't you dare decide what's kind for me." She met his gaze and for the first time didn't look away. "I've ruined things before," she whispered. "People. Careers. Futures. I don't care." "Why not?" "Because I'm not trying to fix you, Ivy. I'm trying to know you. And if there are ghosts in your garden, I want to meet them too." A long silence followed. Then she reached for his hand. And this time she didn't let go. The wind whispered through the broken panes of the old greenhouse as the sun set behind the Catskill Hills. Ivy sat cross-legged on the stone floor beside Lucien, still holding his hand like it was something fragile, an anchor she wasn't sure she deserved. Neither of them spoke for a long time. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was thick with things unspoken, truths they hadn't yet dared to touch. Lucien finally broke the stillness. "I don't know how to do this," he said, staring at the wild violets crawling over the moss-covered stone. "I've always been good at control, planning. But with you, I can't plan how I feel." Ivy let out a soft breath. "Maybe that's a good thing." He turned to her. "Tell me everything. No filters. No lies." She hesitated. Then, with trembling fingers, she opened her sketchbook, not to the flowers she'd drawn, but to a single portrait. It was Lucien asleep from the night after the wedding. His face was unguarded, peaceful, human. "I've been drawing you since I left," she admitted. "Because if I didn't, I'd forget what it felt like. Being seen." His throat tightened. "I never stopped seeing you, Ivy." She closed the book. "My real name isn't Ivy." Lucien blinked. She smiled faintly. "It's Isadora Lavelle. Ivy Lane was something I made up after the scandal. A name no one would recognize." Lucien sat with the weight of that. Isadora. A name both delicate and strong. Just like her. "What really happened?" he asked gently. Isadora's voice was quiet, but steady. "I loved a man named Eli Varnes. He owned a gallery. He believed in me at first. Then he started using me. He asked me to create inspired copies of famous pieces. At first it was harmless. Until it wasn't. I signed them, thinking he'd never pass them off as originals. But he did. And when it blew up, he let me take the fall." Lucien clenched his fists. "Why didn't you fight back?" Her eyes shimmered. "Because by the time I realized what he'd done, I was already lost in him. And once I was accused, no one wanted to hear the rest. Not the press. Not the art world. Not even your family." She shook her head slowly. "My parents died in a fire when I was 19. My foster family kept me out of obligation. I've been on my own a long time." Lucien reached over and touched her cheek. "Not anymore." Isadora closed her eyes at his touch. "I don't want you to save me, Lucien." "I don't want to save you," he replied. "I want to walk beside you. There's a difference." They spent the night in that broken greenhouse, talking, sharing, laughing even. She told him about the cat she used to feed in her alley, the way she loved thunderstorms, the time she once sold a painting for $5 just to buy coffee. He told her about his father, cold, exacting, always disappointed. About his mother's soft hands and tired smile. About how he once dreamed of being an architect, not a CEO. By morning they were still awake, still beside each other. Lucien looked at her with new eyes, not just as someone beautiful, but as someone real. Wounded, yes, but resilient. "What do we do now?" she asked softly. "We start over." She blinked. "As what?" "As Lucien and Isadora." Back in the city, things moved quickly. Lucien helped her find a small loft in Brooklyn. Nothing extravagant, just hers. A space with windows and sunlight and blank walls waiting for paint. He arranged for a lawyer to discreetly revisit the fraud case. New evidence was uncovered. Emails from Eli Varnes, showing he had masterminded the entire thing. Quietly, the truth began to surface. The whispers in the art world shifted. But not everyone welcomed Isadora's return. An anonymous letter arrived at Lucien's office. "You're risking your reputation for a liar. If she burns you too, no one will feel sorry." Tessa intercepted it. She handed it to Lucien, frowning. "Do you think she still has enemies?" Lucien didn't hesitate. "I think she has people who are afraid of her rising again." That night, he showed Isadora the letter. Her hands trembled as she read it. "I told you I'm a storm," she whispered. Lucien looked into her eyes. "Then I'll be the fool who walks straight into the rain." But storms have a way of testing everything they touch. 3 weeks later, the art world buzzed with a sudden announcement. Eli Varnes was returning with a new exhibit titled Resurrection. He claimed to have discovered lost pieces by artists from the scandal, including ones signed by A.L. Lucien was furious. "He's dragging you back into the fire." But Isadora only stared at the headline. "Then maybe it's time I step into it." She called a press conference. Lucien stood beside her as cameras flashed and questions flew. Isadora spoke with calm, unwavering clarity. "Yes, I signed those paintings." It had been a month since the boardroom storm. Since the press had started calling Isadora the phoenix of the art world. Since she and Lucien had stopped pretending the world outside mattered more than the one they were building inside. The loft was no longer empty. Paintings leaned against walls, coffee mugs gathered beside easels, and a scent of lavender lingered in the corners. Lucien spent more time there than at his penthouse. More time than he had ever allowed himself to spend anywhere that wasn't about business. Isadora called it their pause place. "I'm not your world, Lucien," she told him one night, her legs folded beneath her as they sat on the floor eating takeout. Don't lose yourself in me. He smiled, touching her knee. Maybe you're not my whole world, but you're the first part that ever felt like home. Still, there were cracks in the peace. Whispers. Photographers had started lurking again. Paparazzi photos of Isadora walking alone in the rain, carrying canvases, hugging Lucien goodbye outside his office. The headlines flipped between admiration and speculation. Redemption romance. Reformed fraud or strategic move. Graves' empire's wild card. Isadora's influence behind the scenes. Isadora tried to laugh them off. But some nights, when she thought Lucien was asleep, he caught her sitting at the window, silent tears slipping down her cheeks. She was waiting for it to end. For the happiness to vanish. For the world to punish her again. Lucien decided it was time. They needed to disappear for a while. He cleared his schedule, turned off his phone, and booked a cabin by the lake in Vermont. No reception. No press. No meetings. Just them, the water and the woods. Isadora resisted at first. I don't want to hide. It's not hiding, he said. It's healing. She agreed finally. But only after he promised to let her paint every morning undisturbed. The cabin was perched on the edge of a vast, silent lake, so still it mirrored the sky perfectly. Pines lined the edge like guardians. At night, stars spilled across the blackness in thousands. They settled into a rhythm. Lucien cooked. Isadora painted. They read, laughed, swam naked in the freezing water. She painted his back while he sipped wine. He kissed her shoulder in the quiet hum of dusk. They had become something real, something tender. But with love comes truth. And one morning, as they walked the wooded trail that curved around the lake, Lucien stopped beneath a weathered birch and turned to her. Isadora. She glanced at him, cheeks flushed from the cold. I love you. The words landed between them like firelight. He hadn't said it before. Not fully. Not yet. She froze. Her fingers clenched. And then she whispered, I can't. Lucien blinked. I mean, I feel it, she rushed. I do. But every time someone says those words to me, they leave. Or I ruin it. Or something awful happens. I'm scared. Lucien stepped closer. I didn't say it to pressure you. She looked up. Her voice trembled. Then why? Because it's true. Because loving you doesn't scare me. Losing you does. Tears welled in her eyes. She didn't answer then. Just reached for his hand and squeezed it so tightly it hurt. That night, a storm rolled in. Lightning streaked the sky. The wind howled. Power flickered and went out. Lucien lit candles. Isadora wrapped herself in a blanket and pulled out her sketchbook. They sat in the living room, shadows dancing across their faces. He watched her draw. Her hands moved quickly, almost violently across the page. What are you making? He asked softly. Fire, she said. And what it leaves behind. He reached over and gently turned the sketchbook toward him. It was them, standing in a burning forest, holding hands. Lucien swallowed. Is that how you see us? She nodded. It's always fire. I destroy everything I touch. No, he said. You're not the fire. You're the one who walks through it and keeps going. She stared at him for a long time. Then she leaned forward and kissed him so deeply, it felt like a vow. The next morning they woke to silence. But not peace. Lucien's phone, charging in the corner on backup power, buzzed violently the moment the signal returned. He checked it, and his blood ran cold. FBI investigation targets Graves Enterprises for financial misconduct. Isadora sat up. What is it? He showed her the screen. They're coming after me now. They didn't leave each other after that night. Not even when the fire got hotter. When newspapers screamed CEO in crisis and forums debated Isadora Lavelle, muse or menace. Not even when Graves Enterprises stock dipped for the first time in 6 years, and Lucien's advisors begged him to go silent, to distance himself, to retreat into the shadows of good PR. Instead they stood side by side. In front of the press, the board, the storm. And Lucien Graves, for the first time in his meticulously controlled life, made it clear. Love wasn't weakness. It was war. And he was ready to fight. But it was Isadora who turned the tide. In the small gallery she'd opened again, beneath the heavy breath of cameras and suspicion, she unveiled her newest collection, Ashes and Us. Each painting told a story. One of betrayal. One of love. One of rage and rebirth. There were silhouettes of Lucien in dark rooms, surrounded by walls made of glass. There were self-portraits with her heart torn open, painted in red and gold. There were even pieces that featured the media, lines of distorted faces with microphones for mouths. But it was the final piece that silenced everyone. A canvas nearly 7 feet tall, painted entirely in shades of storm, slate, ink, and violet. In the center stood 2 figures, holding hands while fire ate away at the world around them. At the base, the inscription read, "Let it all burn as long as we're still standing." The room went quiet. Then, slowly, applause began to build. Not polite, not out of obligation, but because every person there had seen something of themselves in that pain, that hope, that war-torn kind of love. The collection sold out in 2 days. And more importantly, Eli Varnes choked on it. Lucien received a call from the FBI the following week. "Charges dropped," they said. "No evidence. Someone's trying to smear you." Lucien didn't smile. He didn't cheer. He simply looked at Isadora across the room, her fingers stained with charcoal, her hair tied up in a messy knot, and whispered, "It's over." "No," she corrected gently. "It's finally beginning." The wedding, the one that started it all, had been rescheduled. Andrew and his fiancée, Clara, insisted on going through with it, despite the earlier tension and media madness. "Besides," Clara said to Isadora one afternoon, "I kind of love that our fake date turned real." Isadora laughed. "You're very forgiving." "No," Clara said, smiling. "I'm just a romantic."